I'd like to welcome everyone to this, the third of Self-Help Africa's new series of Science for Development webinars. This panel discussion is focused on the BT Young Scientist category of Behavioural and Social Sciences and features two student projects that we've identified as highly noteworthy. Now, I say that this is our third one, but you don't need to be watching or viewing this in order, or indeed necessarily need to watch them all. Perhaps one of the categories being covered is of a particular relevance and interest, but we do hope that each of these webinars are engaging, informative, and inspiring for students and teachers looking for research project ideas for the next science competition. We aim to raise awareness of possible career paths the Science for Development field offers. Therefore, each panel includes scientists that are currently working here in Ireland and in our development programs in Africa. This webinar is looking at the category of behavioural and social sciences. So that's why we have our little cartoon up here, looking at attitudes and the challenge we all face when we're asked to change. Outwardly demanding change, but inwardly resisting the fact that we might have to change our habits. It's really great for us to have schools involved, but in particular youth reach, as well as professionals, as well as teachers. Each year, Self-Help Africa, along with Irish Aid, facilitates the Science for Development Award at the BT Young Scientist. And these webinars are aimed at raising the level of awareness of this award and its criteria for researching environmental and social issues faced by communities and regions beyond our shore. In this way, we are aligned with the principles behind the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are to focus on the most vulnerable first and to leave nobody behind. So who do we have with us today? Well, we do have our 2020 winners here, or at least one half of the team. We have Salome here joining us from St. Joseph's Mercy in Navan. So can you hear us okay, Salome?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Great, you're most welcome. We'll hear about your project shortly. But we also have students join us from some Brigids in Killarney, Kerry, Ali and Eilís, and they are presenting on a project that they put in this year's event, which they are going to tell us all about, because they have found out that nearly everybody in Ireland knows nothing about virtual farming. And I know that the impact of tourism is part of your project. So I was wondering, was Killarney very busy this summer?
Yeah, we had a load of tourists coming, especially from countries like America and England. So it was nice to see a bit of life in the town again.
And it's a bit quieter now, is it?
Yeah, there's still a few people around, but it's definitely quieter than it was during the summer.
Great, great, thank you. So that's, you see, we can hear you loud and clear. So we'll be back to hear about vertical farming shortly. Each of these webinars, we feature relevant working scientists, like I say, from Ireland, or at least working in Ireland, and from our program countries in Africa. And today we're joined from Maynooth University by Dr. Zerrin Kucuk. I think is close to her name. And she's an assistant professor in the education department and has done research with children connected to the STEM subjects, and also looking at integrating sustainable development goals in education, or the sustainable development goals into education. So you're very welcome, Zerrin.
Welcome. Thanks for this invitation.
We're delighted to have you. And can I ask, how is the campus in Maynooth now? Is it getting busy?
Yes, on Monday we start our face-to-face lectures, and the campus is very lively right now. Although I'm at home, but after the webinar I will go to campus, and it's nice to be back on campus.
Great. Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm sure it makes a big difference for everybody teaching and learning. Finally, but very importantly, we are joined by Esther Ainyo, our regional program manager in Uganda. And she's going to explain to us some of the work that the team there are doing to support rural communities to combat the all too real effects of climate change, and with the aim to eradicate poverty. So this really puts the ideas of science for development into real life context. Esther, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you all the way from Uganda. Can you tell us whereabouts in Uganda you are and what the countryside is like?
I'm from northeast sub-region in Uganda, and the region is basically savanna, grassland, and with almost 80% of the population engaged in subsistence agriculture as their source of livelihood. But Uganda, as you know, is the Pearl of Africa and is a home to almost 10 national parks. So you're almost welcome to visit the country. You'll enjoy the ambience here.
I hope one day to enjoy Uganda. I've seen incredible photos of the regions that the programs are running, and to see those national parks be great. But yes, that's a very relevant statistic that you said there, that 80% of the population are involved in subsistence farming on very small plots of land. So I'm sure we'll learn more about that from you shortly. Let's get into the projects that we have today then. So first, can we go to Salome in Navan? Can you give us an insight, Salome, to your award-winning project called Period?
Basically, myself and Sophie, we started the project Period because we had an interest in how period poverty affects women all around the globe. Because before, we didn't actually really know how bad it affects people, even in Ireland to this day. So we kind of wanted to look for a way to get sustainable period products to women in developing countries, so that if we were going to improve the period poverty in other countries, it would need to be ethical and good for the environment too, instead of making another mess for us that we already have in the Western world. So we bought some ones online, and then we also made ones ourselves, and we basically compared them and how much liquid they can hold and how durable they are, and washing them and stuff, and they were pretty much like at the same rate of each other. So it is possible to make your own pads and have a healthy, hygienic period with them. And then we also thought, well, how are we supposed to get pads across into different countries? So I came up with a peer-led program where you teach workshops over multiple weeks and teach people how to make their own pads, while also educating young girls and women, even boys too, about periods and menstrual health in general.
Well done. This project really stood out, and rightfully was a winner because of this approach that you did, not just creating affordable recycled material period pads, but this peer-to-peer approach, this empowering of the young people to learn and to speak to one another. Am I right that you picked up on that approach through a mental health program that you came across originally? Is that right?
In TY, I did a mental health program with Jigsaw, where we were giving talks to first years about mental health. And it actually did make like a big difference, because obviously if it's someone in the same situation as you teaching about the topic, you're more likely to listen to it, rather than like someone that doesn't even know what they're talking about telling you about it. And
speaking in terms and using language that you understand, you know, that you're familiar with and that you connect with.
It makes it more safer, and people are able to like talk more openly about it.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, this term that you use, this is a real thing, is it? Period poverty. How would you? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Basically, period poverty is people who menstruate not having access to the sanitary products. So say in Ireland, most homeless women, they don't have access to sanitary products, but there's charities out there like Homeless Period Ireland that do great work in providing sanitary products for homeless women and children. And say like in Scotland, they solved their period poverty by making sanitary products free.
In Scotland, they've done that, have they?
Yeah, this is a recent thing. Hopefully Ireland will be following.
Yeah, okay, so come on, Ireland, yes. When you were researching this, this phenomenon of, period poverty, what's the impact that it has, in particular, when you were looking in the sort of developing world countries?
We looked at a few case studies. One that stood out to me was one in South Africa, where they found that girls were missing like a third of their year in school, or girls would stop going to schools because they didn't have period products and therefore didn't want to go to school and be unhygienic. So they were missing out on the days and missing out on education. And that shows when you go on to third education, how less women are going than men. That's because they've missed out because of their period, which is unacceptable.
Completely, yes. And then just as an aside, I know that your project and your visit to the BT Young Scientist happened before COVID came along and then lockdown. So you actually got to go to the actual event. That your experience and knowledge of looking at fabrics, that you converted that knowledge from what you had been looking at to the new demand for masks. Is that right?
Yeah, we definitely, like when it started happening, we thought about this and we thought it'd be a great idea, but obviously COVID did hit, so we didn't actually get to implement that properly yet. And hopefully we won't need the masks soon enough. But
have you continued thinking about the project, or has it inspired other work?
Well, actually, I saw there was in the social behavior science category from last year, is it? There was a project on periods, and me and Sophie were actually thinking of doing like a psychological study on how people view periods, because there definitely is a stigma. And if we don't break that stigma, obviously we can't make progress.
Yeah, very well put, that it's an issue here in Ireland as well as in other regions and countries. And it's great to see you there now. Well done. So yeah, thanks for your for that input. And we'll move on now. Thank you, Salome, so much.
Thank you.
And we'll go over to Killarney and to Ali and Eilís. And can you tell us about your project, which was in this year's exhibition, Vertical Farming and the Future of Healthy Schools?
Yes, so hello and welcome to our project, Vertical Farming, the Future for Healthy Schools. My name is Ali O'Donoghue.
And my name is Eilís Mullane.
And we're from St. Brigid's Presentation Secondary School, Killarney. So you may not be familiar with the term vertical farming, but we believe this is a method that could feed the people on our planet and help make it a more sustainable world.
So let's tell you what vertical farming is. Most farming takes place in flat fields in Ireland, but vertical farming takes place indoors on shelves which are stacked on top of each other rather than across a field.
Not all plants can be grown vertically, but it really suits growing herbs and microgreens. These are very important in adding nutrients and colour to your dishes. When we surveyed our classmates, teachers, canteen staff, and those in the hotel business in Killarney about what they knew of vertical farming, the vast majority knew nothing.
We live in Killarney and our school is across from the Killarney National Park. Everyone in our school is becoming more aware of the importance of the environment in our lives. Sustainable tourism is also a very important part of Killarney life. We love to see visitors here, but we want to ensure that it has little impact on our environment. If we can grow our own plants vertically in our schools and hotels, we can cut down on importing goods to reduce our carbon footprint.
Due to the current pandemic, we have to begin the growing experiments in our own homes. Our parents had reservations about the idea initially, but when we began growing the microgreens, they realized there was less space required and the microgreens were grown in 21 days. In 21 days, we got a large number of microgreens, which we used in smoothies and garnishes in our dinners.
Our world is in our hands, and we need to ensure that it is there for future generations to enjoy. In order to do this, we need to change our methods of recycling, transport, and of course, farming. Vertical farming is the solution, in our view, to resolving the constant demand for food like fruit and vegetables.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you learned something new. And in the words of Barack Obama, we are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change, and we are the last generation who can do anything about it.
Thank you for that. You said there when you surveyed the community around you, including the hotels, that nobody had heard of vertical farming. So how did you come across it as an idea or as a possibility?
So Ali's brother is studying bioscience in college, and he did a project on it, and that's where we first came across the idea. We felt it could be very beneficial to schools as a way of producing fresh fruit and vegetables daily for the canteen.
I know it's hard for people to visualize, and maybe people will go on to research and look into what is meant by these shelves, vertical farming in a smaller space. But what we're talking about here is rather than a quantity of food, it's high quality, high nutrients.
Yeah, and that they require little space, so there's more room on land for like houses, etc. So you can still grow all the crops, but in a more smaller space.
And I know that you have both continued to look into this and have plans for this year's or next year's 2022's BET Young Scientists. So what are you looking to start looking into next?
So our hope is to continue our research on the various modules of gardening, like focusing on the farming unit, which we currently have enrolled in our school, and the tower garden at Killarney's urban farm. And these are based on the vertical farming method of growing plants and herbs. We also wish to make sustainable gardening accessible in our community, country, and in fact the world, especially those countries that are not as developed as others. And our other aim is to design a unit that will be more sustainable and have materials that are affordable and would encourage everyone to engage with gardening with an awareness for the future.
Well, good luck with the next round of research and the next competition.
Thank you.
And just finally, once you raised people's awareness of this as an option, what were their attitudes? I'm curious to say, like, what response you got from the likes of hotels or your school to the idea of sourcing these salads and sprouted beans, say, locally.
So in our school, the response was like overall very positive. We felt the majority of people said they would give 15 minutes a week to the maintenance of the growing unit. So we were really happy with that, because most people felt that it is important that we're not importing the plants as much and cut down on the air miles, because sustainability is becoming a huge thing in our school, and we feel that we need to do something to work on it and make the change now.
And then the hotels, they had a very positive attitude towards it, and I think it raised awareness in how that they can do vertical farming and be more sustainable by doing it.
And I always think that maybe you have a business idea there for Killarney that could be quite successful, I think. All the hotels there that you could be making smoothies for. So best of luck.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for that. Let's move on to Dr. Zerrin Kucuk. And maybe, Zerrin, could you tell us a little of what you're getting up to in the Department of Education in Maynooth University?
Yeah, I'm working with student teachers. I think you are familiar with student teachers in your schools. They come to your schools to observe and assist your teachers, and also they learn teaching by teaching you, actually teaching students. So my audience is student teachers that would like to be teachers. So I'm working with science student teachers, mathematics and computer science student teachers in the education department. And I also visit schools to observe my student teachers, and also dealing with some methodologies to teach science, mathematics. So I describe myself as a social scientist because although my area is science education, I am a social scientist interested in teaching, learning of students, how to teach some topics effectively. So we are testing some strategies, not in an experimental way, but in a social science way. So we in social science, we don't use controlled lab environments, but we try to observe what is going on without any so much control over the environment. So that's what we are doing in social sciences. For the students, for the young scientists who participate in this webinar, and for the teachers who are supporting their students, maybe I can inspire you in a way that what methods we are using in social sciences. For data collection, we use some various methods. What is the difference between pure sciences and social science? It's mostly the how we collect data differs, and how we analyze these data differ comparing to pure and social sciences. As we see in the first two projects by our young scientists, they use surveys in both projects to understand the effect of their project, or the background of the thing they are studying. So surveys and questionnaires can be used in social science projects. We can use some skills. We can look up the literature and use the scales that are validated, standardized scales. And here, maybe you are familiar with Likert type, like it starts with highly agree to highly disagree. These are the scales we can use to measure some kind of attitudes, perceptions of people. So in social sciences, we use lots of scales. And observations is another way, especially when we try to understand behavioral change. We use observations frequently, but we should do this in a systematical way since we are doing science. So we should use some kind of a checklist that what you are expected. And during the observations, you can use some checklists or rubrics. Rubrics are actually frequently used by teachers in the classrooms. Like they have criteria and some levels like achieved, highly achieved, or like underperformed. These are rubrics that you can use during your observations. And interviews are a good way. So you can conduct individual interviews with people, or you can conduct focus group interviews where you can conduct an interview with a group of people having some same interests or having some same experiences. After that, you have to transcribe the interview and understand the flow of their answers, try to catch some themes from the answers from different people. You can use documents, but I think for a competition like this, using documents is not so much like sufficient. You should use some other data collection methods, but maybe using some policy documents as a start to present your rationale of your study could be a good point. And even you can use drawings, like when you are working with children. Drawings is a very good way, especially if you are working with children, they don't read yet. So drawings can also give us some ideas about the people you are working with. And of course, with drawings, you should have some criteria, some checklist rubrics accompanied with the drawings. That's the collection, data collection methods you can use. And maybe before coming to this webinar, Aaron liked one of my study. And it was about scientific creativity. Maybe you heard this term for the first time. Creativity is mostly related to arts. That's what we assume, but in science, we need creativity somehow. And to show scientific creativity, of course, you need to have some scientific background and you should have some scientific skills. Scientific creativity is related to being flexible and open to innovation in terms of your selection of data collection methods, your research design. In science education, we also want our students to be scientifically creative. They should be able to use an instrument for other purposes. So if you can have a look at, I don't know if you can read the items, it is a highly validated scale that is designed by O'Donoghue and Eilís in 20 years ago, actually. And I use this scale in my study. And these scientists designed this instrument for 7th grade. It is second year in junior cycle in Ireland students. But I use this scale for 10 to 11 years old students. And I designed an intervention including various STEM activities. And after that, I looked whether these students somehow relate what they have learned during my intervention, whether they were able to show some kind of creative scientific creativity. And I measured this with this scale. For example, I want to read one of the items in the scale, like, please use as many methods as possible to divide a square into 4 equal pieces. This is some kind of creativity, and the target skill is like solving a science problem. So the students should use some kind of mathematics knowledge to solve this scientific problem. Or like, suppose there was no gravity, describe what the Earth would be like. So this item also includes lots of creativity. So this was one of my past studies. So I would like to also talk about a little bit about my current research project. In this project, I collaborate with geography department in Maynooth University. So actually they are leading this project and they invite 2 colleagues from education department. The name of the project is Space Surveys and Students, STEM and Sustainable Development Goals Project. So in geography department, they work extensively with satellite data. Right now, when we look at junior cycle curriculum, both geography and science, one of the objectives is like to use data to communicate data, objectives of the curriculum. So we want our students to use real-time satellite data to understand the global changes in the world. And in this way, we can discuss sustainability and climate change in our classrooms, in both science and geography classrooms. What I contribute to this project, like I support this research team in terms of training teachers, training our student teachers to teach these tools and how to use data by the students. So that is my contribution to the project. I try to develop some attractive teaching methods for using satellite data in science education. So I hope these projects and these ideas would inspire you to design your own research projects.
Wonderful, great. Thank you very much. There's a lot to think about there. I love the ideas and the encouragement to meld science with arts, and that it's not separate and can never meet. That it can both can inform each other in research. So that's brilliant. I love the idea of scientific creativity and being able to have a scientific imagination, and that's how we innovate. Yes. And that's obviously what these student projects and the Think BT Young Scientists is all about, innovations to improve everything, wherever field you're focusing on. So some great techniques there, I think, and insights. So thank you very much for that. So finally, can we go all the way over to Uganda and to Esther Ainyo, who is a regional program manager for Self-Help Africa in Uganda. So Esther, please, can you share some of your current work with us there and the programs that you're involved in?
Okay, I'm going to give a very, very brief background of what we do. And the rural communities in Teso, in Uganda, as a general, 25% of the population lives below the poverty line, with 72.4% engaging in agriculture. Of the 72, 77 are women. 88 of the 72 live in the rural areas. The major challenges that the rural communities face are unemployment, especially among the youth at 52%, erratic weather conditions, low tech adoption, insecurity of land ownership in Uganda, and especially Teso, women do not own land. Lack of credit, especially for agricultural engagements, and negative shocks like COVID and erratic weather conditions. In Teso specifically, Teso is almost the same size of Northern Ireland, and it's a home to 1.8 people, formerly displaced, having suffered atrocities from the Lord's Resistance Army and the Karamojong cattle rustlers, which forced them to IDP camps for almost 2 decades. So people in Teso are 4 times more likely than the national population to be poor, with 72.7 poor and 16 economically insecure. So you'll find that 72% of the population are reliant on subsistence agriculture. So what do we do as a project? As SHA, we support organic vegetable production, and basically we train farmers to produce their own organic pesticides, organic manure, and organic liquid plant tea. We also support increase of agriculture and production and productivity. We offer improved quality seed and also support the farmers with oxen to open land. We support the farmers to construct Lorena efficient stoves. These stoves, one, emit little smoke, they cook faster, and they also use less firewood as compared to the ordinary stoves. So you find that the women are saved of time to collect little firewood as compared to the ordinary stoves that use a lot of firewood. We also encourage tree planting as an environment conservation activity. Through the GIRLS methodology, GIRLS is Gender Action Learning methodology. We promote joint visioning and joint planning. The communities in Teso, especially in the rural area, before we engaged them, especially on saving, households save individually. The husband is saving alone, the wife is saving alone, so you find that they don't grow together. So through the GIRLS methodology, we encourage them to vision together. They have to determine where they are and where they want to be as a family. So you find that most of them have taken on businesses jointly as a family. The chart there is a vision road journey for one of the families. What they want their household to look like is they want a decent home for themselves. They want a bicycle, they want a motorbike. So they put it in kind of a chart and pin it on the wall so that they keep reminded each day when they look at the chart. We also support acquisition of decent housing. So you find this family, this is Susan and Caucus. They have been staying in a grass thatched house as you look at it, but currently they are constructing a brick house, which they hope to move in very soon. And this will be their first house, decent home to stay in. We also have a project, Teso. Teso is focusing on mapping available options for ICT in Teso, studying the existing barriers for ICT adoption, and understanding the impact of facilitating and promoting adoption of ICT use in relation to market linkages, good agronomic practices, food and nutrition practices. So it's kind of a pilot, and we hope, based on the findings, we hope to come up with a much more bigger project. We are currently doing second phase of data collection at the moment. The two photos there you see as pupils walking to school. In Teso, it's very normal for pupils of that age to walk for 2, 3, 4 kilometers to school barefoot, and that is what it is at the moment. But as I speak now, due to COVID-19, actually some pupils have been at home for the last 1.5 years. And with no rural electricity, they can't engage in online lessons. So at the moment, they're just playing around the farm, and there's no hope of going to school up until probably next year. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. That was really powerful insight to what the region you're working in and the programs, and also the harsh reality of life for these rural communities. I mean, to have, I'll get these numbers wrong, but you're saying that in that area of Teso, over 80% of people are economically vulnerable. They're either poor, extremely poor, or very vulnerable to disruption. So that's quite extraordinary to think of. Another factor or stat that jumps out at me and is an important part of our awareness raising here in Ireland is the idea that we might misconstrue when we think about farmers who we're talking about, and that your statistic there, that 70% of the work on farmers is done by women. Is that true?
Yes, yeah. And it's basically subsistence farming. It's not on commercial, it's not large scale. And
you're saying that also that women are not owning the land, so are not able to make decisions and easily.
They can only access the land, but they don't have control over it. So they are entirely dependent on their husbands to decide where they can grow which type of crop.
Which obviously also slows down or prevents the adoption of new techniques or new ways of working.
Certainly, yes.
So gender inequality is a big obstacle to overcome. And just to flag, in Ireland, things aren't equal either. I don't know if you know that in the EU, Ireland has one of the lowest levels of female ownership of farms in the EU. So there's work to be done here in Ireland also on that side. You mentioned the area you were in, the region you're working in there is Teso, yes?
Yes.
And the project you mentioned is Teso. And am I right that the funding and some of the partnership with that is with Queen's University in Belfast?
Yes, yes.
And it's a pilot at the moment, and you're hoping for it to continue, is it?
Yes, based on the findings, then we shall be in position to put together a bigger proposal. But at the moment, it's a pilot, and we hope to end in November this year. It's just about 9 months.
And again, the technique that you showed there, I'm sure Zerrin spotted it with the use of drawings. When people maybe aren't able to express themselves through language or writing, or even understand documents, to do a visual exercise, like, what was it, a vision road journey. I thought that was very interesting approach, and something that people, students might look into, because it's extremely low tech and accessible, but a lovely way to vision the future, and then to see how to get there in realizable steps. What are the additional or the growing challenges that you're facing now, that you're seeing that it maybe perhaps things have changed, be it raining patterns or growing seasons?
Actually, other than COVID, the really big challenge at the moment is the erratic weather conditions. Farmers no longer know when to plant and when to start and when the rains will stop. And you find that the weather is really extreme in such a way that when it's raining, there's waterlogging. When it's a dry season, there's a dry spell. Previously in Teso, we had 2 planting seasons, but we are now tending towards 1 planting season, which is even getting more shorter. And yet the farmers rely entirely and totally on rain-fed agriculture. So you find that the food insecurity situation is really alarming, much as we support the farmers with the techniques and knowledge, but we don't have control over the rain.
And then just to go back to something that struck me with you saying the impact of COVID and the children missing school, having maybe 2 years having missed school, and this what we would call a digital divide, that they don't have access to any kind of online learning because of unreliable or non-existent access to electricity, even, which is obviously something that could be changed, could be altered.
In the rural areas, I must say there's no electricity. There is 0% access to electricity.
Wow.
And the boys you saw there have never seen a laptop.
Yes.
So online learning is a myth to them.
Yes.
So they really have to wait until they open schools sometime. There's a rumor that they might open schools next year. But the lower primary have not been to school since last year, around May or April, up until now. So you find that there are now very high cases of teenage pregnancies and early child marriages.
That's very powerful. The impacts of COVID and lockdown are going to be long lasting, aren't they? And have massive impact of communities and Uganda's development. Wow, thank you very much, Esther. That's really insightful, and it's amazing work. Maybe I can just ask as a finish, would any of the students have a top tip or some pearls of wisdom for those teachers and those students that are heading into the BT Young Scientist this year round, from your experience?
Start as early as possible. So once you have all your research and work done and written out, then you can focus on how you can present it, because the big thing apart of BT is how you actually make your project come across to the judges. So do it as early as possible and don't leave it to the last minute. From personal experience.
And Ali and Eilís?
To do a project on a topic that you're interested in, so then you'll enjoy the whole experience and you'll be able to talk confidently about it. I suppose just to try and keep focused, like set your goals and the hypothesis at the start and kind of build on them then, so the report then can be more focused and you keep on track.
Great. I hope you follow your own advice since you're involved this year. And something that I've become aware of running these webinars is that students need to be aware and be encouraged to be bold and to ask questions of professionals and institutions. Go and pester scientists and universities, the likes of Zerrin and maybe even Esther. I'd be only delighted to get a question or two from students that are working in this area, especially anything that comes along the lines of the Sustainable Development Goals. Your original project was badly restricted because of COVID. So this time, is there things that you would have done before that you couldn't do that you are hoping to be able to do this time?
Yeah, so we get to kind of do more growing experiments in the school, which was our hope from the start. Like with family and their unit, we're hoping to go see their unit, and just we can have kind of more meetings in person with people and get more information that way as well. We have a loan of it's a 2-tier vertical farming modular. We got it from Farmony. It's growing using hydroponics. It has a submerged pump at the bottom of it, and then it recycles water, which we feel would be good also for the developing countries when they have the lack of water.
I wonder, Esther, do you have any programs using hydroponics?
I'm not very familiar with it. What we are promoting at farmer group level is the kitchen gardens, which is basically the ordinary vegetable gardens within the homesteads.
A kitchen garden maybe not necessarily has to be on the grounds that you have, but using the wall of your home.
The vertical farm is expensive to have and run.
That's kind of one of the areas we also wanted to look at. The vertical farming unit from Farmony and the Green Towers unit that uses the aeroponics, which is growing in air rather than in water. They're very expensive for the school even, so we feel that they wouldn't be sustainable. So we're kind of looking at making a unit ourselves, different materials that could be more beneficial and a cheaper option.
Yeah, because the unit itself will be up around 800, 600 euro. And then that's not including seed costs or electricity running costs and all that. So it is a very big investment.
That's really the kind of project that we are very excited about, because a technical advancement is of no use if it's not affordable and accessible to people that need it and works in the environment that people need it. So much like yourself, Salome, with your research into pads, what is available? How can somebody put it together themselves? Can it be as effective? Very interesting inputs from everyone. So I'd like to thank the panelists, the speakers, for your time and your inputs, and wish the students the best of luck in your studies and your next projects. Same goes for you, Zerrin, and your research, and Esther, your amazing work with your team there in Uganda. All the very best. And thank you to everyone who took the time to join us. And like I say, these webinars will be available online to review. We have one more coming up in October, which will focus on the category of technology.